Well, you know, our kids are over at Brookdale doing a service for the seniors that are there. And if we came back and ate all the cake before they were here, I think we'd be in trouble, or at least I'd be in trouble with 2 of them. We'll see what we do. Because we're going to do a little trash talking. Nah, not the idiomatic way. We're going to talk about trash. All right, everybody loves trash. Not so much, right? Trash is it's an idiom generally in English and in most languages for something that is worthless and useless and thrown away. When something is a terrible idea or a terrible regime or company, we say once it finally fails and it has been thrown away that it has been cast upon the trash heap of history, right? And certainly when we think of the greatness of antiquity, we think of things like the pyramids, right, which are not giant trash mounds, or we think something like the Acropolis, the beautiful building in Athens. We think of the Colosseum of Rome. We think of the beautiful cathedrals of Europe. We don't like to think about trash. And yet we have learned more from the trash of antiquity than we have from any of those monuments. Growing up in San Diego, I was lucky enough to have a little hands-on experience with this, not just picking through the dump with my grandfather, may he rest in peace. It wasn't trash, that was good stuff, as he always told us, but there were many archaeological digs around San Diego while I was growing up. There were digs for the native cultures that had settlements all around the Bay Area, and there were digs also at the Spanish settlements that had come at different points in different parts of the city. And I'll tell you, the action was all in the trash pit. That's where you wanted to dig. Because what goes into our trash pits? Everything of daily life, exactly. We may build a cathedral, but the broken tools that were used to build that cathedral, they're in the trash pit. The blueprints that were used, probably also in the trash pit. The food that the workers had eaten in order to be able to build the cathedral, also in the trash pit. The amount of what's in the trash pit can give you a good estimate of how many workers there were. The depth of the trash pit can give you a good estimate of how long the project must have actually taken. Some of the different chemicals that are thrown into the trash would tell you how they colored the glass, how they burnished the bronze, how they chiseled the stone. Much of what we know about antiquity, and all the way up through the late Renaissance, comes from trash, comes from what was left behind, which wasn't considered to be the main point. And we have to think that way too, about 2 very important things. One, we have to think that way about God. Not trying to compare God to trash, God forbid. Trying to say that we cannot see God directly. Hopefully we've all got that down very, very clear. Right? There is no physical body to God. There is no physical manifestation of God that is God. Which means the only way that we can experience God, the only way we can understand what we can of God, is by the droppings left behind in this world from God's actions. Which, compared to God, are trash. Right? Anything compared to the infinite perfection of God is kind of trash in comparison. But they're good for us. What things has God left behind for us that we may know and understand? Us, human beings. Think about what you can know of God by what you are. Think about what you know of God by looking into the face of another human being, by feeling their love, or by sometimes feeling their anger. Think of what you know from God by what it means to breathe, to live, to experience, to be aware of your own existence, to have a yearning for a more fulfilled life than just existence, to have an awareness of awe, of beauty, of splendor in the world. These are the remnants of God's creation of us. What else has God left behind for us to know? The earth. Think of this world around us as we fill it with trash. Think of this world around us and the beauty that is contained within it, the symbols of harmony, of complexity, of the intricate dance of this natural world. Think of how your soul is stirred when you visit places of vast beauty and wonder. Think of what is the connection between you and this world, which comes because we are made by the same hand. Because we were thrown into this existence by the same Creator. What else has God left? Torah. Torah. One of the most carefully planted pieces of evidence in the trash heap of this world. And by the way, if you find it offensive that I keep referring to this world as being a trash heap, you should know that it's one of the earliest midrashim found in Bereshit Rabbah, which says exactly that this world was built upon a trash heap. And they weren't even archaeologists when they said that. So, the Torah. What does the Torah tell us that we should know about God, in addition to what it tells us of what we should be doing in this world? Everyone follow the logic? Right? The Torah tells us a lot about what to do, but imagine the Torah was written by a human being. What would it tell us about the character of the author? No adjectives come to mind. You have read the Torah sometime, right? Merciful. Right? The Torah seeks compassion and mercy and understanding. It talks about forgiveness constantly. You may have noticed that in today's very Torah portion. The author of the Torah is clearly concerned, keenly, with the attribute of mercy and compassion. More? Expectations. There is a standard. That we are supposed to be something more than just the neat robots that we seem to be just on a surface level. But there is an expectation that we will lift ourselves in certain ways, that we will fulfill certain expectations. There are certain transgressions from which a full recovery doesn't work. And that's really the blend between what Debbie and Barbara were saying, that there is mercy and there is also expectations. That God commanded Saul to destroy the Amalekites, and when Saul chose not to destroy their stuff, he was fine with killing people, but when he chose not to destroy their stuff, and not to kill their king, who would have been useful for getting more money out of, God said, I'm sorry, you're no longer going to be king. And Samuel, the prophet, very famously said, Netzach Yisrael lo yishaker, the eternal one of Israel doesn't lie. By the way, that's also the acronym that spells out NELIM, Early Zionist Organization. I didn't make that up. Early Zionist Organization, who took their acronym from that very phrase. Netzach Yisrael lo yishaker. How do we reconcile the mercy with this non-forgiveness? Is an understanding that exactly as God says through the prophet Samuel, Saul was in a unique position. It wasn't just him that was the problem. Saul himself could repent. Saul himself could find forgiveness in God. But Saul himself could no longer serve as king. Because a king had a one-strike and you're out policy when it came to disobeying God's law. As king. Not as an individual. So the mercy was granted to him as a person, but as far as his reign was concerned, it was over. Because a king could not be seen to be placing his own desires, or the desires even of the troops who wanted the stuff, above the command that God had given. That was one of the great lessons that God gave to us about what a king should be, by saying, you're no longer qualified for the job. Forgiven as a person, but you're no longer qualified for the job of king. Lord? Well, how about the other side of Amalek and the other side of mercy? How about justice? How about the notion that there should be some equity in the world? There should be a balance brought to the world, that we should protect the world from those who would destroy and maim and kill and wound, and treat others and other nations as barbarous sport.
There are consequences to what we do.
And there are consequences to that. Justice will come if there is not forgiveness sought by the individual for which mercy would be granted. Think of what we now understand just from this little bit of God. Just from these little actions, these little teachings, which are, of course, of the greatest and most sublime content. And think as well for what that means for us. Think if God had been God and God had not given us Torah. Think if God had been God and not given us the awareness to be able to understand the world. Would we know God? Imagine, same God, same desires for mercy, same desire for compassion, for justice, for having expectations of us, but no revelation of God's presence, either because God did not reveal or because we were not given the tools with which we could understand the revelation. What would we know of God? What's that? Nothing. Nothing. We know as much of God as an ant knows of God. We would know nothing. Would that mean God didn't exist? No. But as far as we were concerned, God's existence would be just not even on the radar. We wouldn't be denying God's existence. We simply would lack the capacity to imagine that God existed from which we could then deny God's existence. It would be a non-starter. And for ourselves as well. How much of what is in us do we keep trapped within us and fail to reveal? How many good intentions do you have? How many plans, designs, hopes, and dreams? How much love do you have for another that you keep here, rather than here and here, in your mouth, in your actions, in your deeds, in the ways that you walk in the world? Oftentimes we store up so much of who we are, afraid to let it out or simply unwilling to let it go for other reasons. But when we do so, we leave nothing behind by which we can be known. Our mere physical presence, it's not really enough. You have to choose to act, choose to live, choose to speak, choose to be as you are, or else you will be unknown, or else you will fade from this world. We have been granted superlative gift of life and the ability to reflect upon ourselves and our own actions within this life. We will leave behind a legacy of our choosing. We will leave behind a legacy of our action. That is what will remain as an indelible and permanent transformation of this world. But you have to choose to act, or else you will fade. Shabbat Shalom. And what do we know of God from a muggy March? That's Florida. Of course it's raining. If we didn't like rain, we wouldn't live here, right? Page 354. The Defenster will act as our Shlichat Tzibur as we continue with our Musaf service. Page 354.
Yitkadah v'yitkadash Shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
V'yalma divrach Yerutei v'yamlich malchutei v'chayechon u'vyonechon u'chayei b'chol Beit Yisrael ha'ara o'nez makarim